All right, still with me. Criminal defense attorneys and former prosecutors, Franz Borghardt and David Bruno. David, I'll start with you. As a former prosecutor, talk to me a little bit about the decision to finally take this to the grand jury. What does that mean in terms of the state of the case by prosecutors?
Yeah, so when we talk about grand juries, a lot of our viewers think about indictment. And that is essentially what the grand juries do. They make decisions on indictments, whether or not prosecutors have brought forth prima facie cases. However, the grand juries also have investigative powers. And when you impanel a grand jury as a prosecutor, you have the ability to use grand jury subpoenas, which is something they didn't have prior. They use the grand jury subpoenas to ducis tecum, to get documents from people, and it's custodian of records or various different agencies or corporations, and also subpoena testificandum, which is you come to the grand jury, get in the grand jury, and now the prosecutor has the ability to ask questions of people. Now the people that are in as witnesses, if they're targets, they get target warnings, and Miranda warnings, target warnings have to be given. And sometimes there are privileges that are claimed, like the Fifth Amendment privilege to remain silent, or the attorney-client privilege, like we saw in the Donald Trump case, where prosecutors were able to pierce the attorney-client privilege. So as a prosecutor, it is an investigative tool to impanel a grand jury, and especially with the use of subpoenas to advance their needs.
All right, great stuff there, David, because Franz, it sounds like for our viewers' purposes, this doesn't mean that they now feel comfortable with their case. There actually sounds like they might still be building a case. We heard from the attorney for Sandy Smith and the Stephen Smith's family that there are about 5 or 6 people they expect or believe have relevant information about the case. So they're still investigating. What types of things might they be looking for? I mean, relevant can mean a lot of things.
So first and foremost, the entire proceeding is secret. So what they do get is they do get a full analysis or full, examination of a witness without anybody knowing what that person's talking about. But, you know, if it's a fishing expedition for them to do an investigative arm of the grand jury, part of it's locking in testimony. Part of it is, hey, we don't know, but maybe we do. I suspect if they are doing this, though, I suspect my spidey senses, so to speak, are saying, they might have a theory that something is happening or is going on. They may have a target that they're not willing to commit to, and maybe they're trying to get enough to go after that target. Yeah. Because you don't have to do, that's the kicker, right, is you don't have to do the grand jury proceeding to do this level of investigation. So the fact that they are doing it, that is, to me, a little bit of smoke.
All right, well, the million-dollar question is, were one of the Murdaughs involved? We know there's been a lot of speculation about the involvement of Buster Murdaugh in this case. We know there's allegations by Sandy Smith, the mother of Stephen Smith, that Randy and Alec were at the scene when the body was there and the investigation was going on. As a matter of fact, let's listen to a little bit about what she has to say about the possible involvement of Buster Murdaugh.
It first came up when Stephen's body was still at autopsy, and some of his friends came over, him and Stephanie's friends, and they said, you know, it was them Murdaugh boys that did this. And then I was like, and Stephanie come up to me crying, and I said, well, Steph, you know, you can't believe everything you hear. People's gonna talk, you know, so, and then it was like, you know, we never thought that. But then it just kept coming over and over and over again.
All right, so David Bruno, it stands to reason that with the conviction of Alec Murdaugh, they reopen this investigation, people suddenly start feeling more comfortable talking about this case, whereas before they were afraid. This powerful family who runs the county, they don't want to say anything against Buster Murdaugh. I wonder now people feel more comfortable talking.
Great points, especially with the subpoena power and the secret nature of the grand jury. You know, the other thing too, Michael, is there's been a lot of pressure on the prosecutor's office, the government, in this particular investigation. And one of the ways that prosecutors use the grand jury is to kind of vet investigations as well. In the end, if a grand jury ends up no-billing the case, well, then there's a little bit of explanation that the prosecutor could rely on to say, hey, look, this wasn't prosecutor discretion. This wasn't just a decision by the prosecutor's office. The grand jury also had the evidence, and they came to the conclusion that it's a no bill, no charges. But there's another reason that the prosecutor may be presenting it. But to your point, yes, now that there's less pressure on with the influence of Alec Murdaugh, the grand jury would be the place to bring people with that subpoena to answer questions under oath.
Yeah, I think it suggests maybe there's a buster involvement, or maybe some people have something to say about that. Quickly, Franz, about the charges in the case. I mean, this is a case where we understand one of the autopsies showed blunt force trauma to the head. The scene itself, where he lay in the road, there was always some question as to whether it was actually a hit and run. But you could have someone trying to hit him with a car, if in fact that happened, which I think could lead to a felony assault, could be a first-degree murder. Someone dumped him in the road to make it look like it was an accident. Your thoughts on possible charges?
So I think you're definitely going to be in the homicide realm. If in fact they can establish that a Murdaugh, and I'm saying this with a bit of a smirk because, I mean, of course it had to be a Murdaugh. If in fact they can establish that somebody did it, you're looking at a homicide. Now, which homicide? We don't know yet. So we'll be staying tuned for the true crime that is the Murdaugh family.
Yeah, and with the Murdaugh family, you just never know. We are awaiting the results of that. It could take time. It always takes a little bit of time in the grand jury, but we'll be following it for sure. All right, folks, moving on.